One of the things I wanted to get from you is, and I know this might be a little bit broad, so feel free to take it in any direction you want, but what are the sort of three mistakes every beginner makes? Or what are the three top mistakes that you most often come in to consult with somebody and you're like, okay, like I've seen this before. It's like a repeating pattern. And so, how can you advise people today to maybe even avoid making that mistake in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great question. So there are a lot of mistakes that I see on a day-to-day basis, either from individuals, sales professionals, or solopreneurs and entrepreneurs that are, on their own really at the beginning stages of their journey, or from larger corporations that I look at as well. And if I had to boil it down, again, it kind of depends who you're speaking to and who the audience is, if they're larger businesses or if it's an individual I'm speaking to. But there's a few mistakes I can think of right off the top of my head. It doesn't necessarily mean they're in that order, but I'll just I'll kind of attack it that way. So first things first, when it comes to sales and even business and entrepreneurship, it's inactivity or lack of enough activity. So a lot of people come to myself when I'm working with them in terms of sales or consulting, or a sales rep will go to their manager or their director and they'll bring all these problems, they'll bring all these issues and challenges and whatnot, right? The first question should always be, how many people have you heard that from? How many times have you experienced that? How many times has this occurred? And if it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 times, then that's not enough data for you to give them feedback on and for you to treat that as a real problem. The same way in sales, you don't just treat every single comment your prospect makes as an objection and try to handle it. In leadership, when you're dealing with your people, when you're dealing with your business, you don't treat every single comment as something that needs to be handled or addressed. The first thing you have to look at is, what is the sample size? I mean, how many times has this occurred? Is this a common occurrence, or is this something that just happened? Has this sales rep only talked to 10 people and they had 3 people give them this answer, or have they actually been doing this for a week and over 500 to 800 people, now they're seeing this recurring theme, right? So that's the first thing I would say, is activity solves most problems. So if you're in sales, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, you just need to do more of your lead generation, your prospecting, do more of what brings in the money, what brings in the clients, and just focus on that first. And through that, you'll find patterns and you'll find things and areas where you're going to need to go in and fix it and correct it. So that's the first thing I'd probably say. The second thing that I see with a lot of people is they don't have the correct processes or systems in place. So when I say processes, I'm referring more to sales and individuals. You don't have the right process in place. You don't have the right scripting or the right structure in place to handle your sales process. You don't have the right steps or sequences in place. When it comes to businesses, a lot of times they don't have the right systems in place. So you're missing systems in your marketing, in your sales, in your fulfillment. You're missing systems. So you have to constantly make up for it by manpower, by putting people in place and by doing the work, or by stepping in yourself and overriding your the people that are working in that role and having to step in and correct it yourself. So it's because you're missing systems. If you look at the greatest businesses on the planet, they have systems in place. If we talk about the greatest franchise on this planet, you take a guess what that is.
McDonald's?
Exactly. I've never had a single person miss. I asked that question. You can try this for yourself. I ask that question all the time in all kinds of different contexts. I haven't had a single person not say McDonald's. So that in itself proves my point there, right there, and then,
For
right?
sure.
My point with McDonald's is, what do they do best? They have systems in place. Their systems are so good that they can have kids run the entire business. They can have a
Hmm.
bunch of teenagers who are often not even sober run that business, right? And it's because they have the systems in place to be able to do that. And they're a great example of that. So when it comes to business, especially as you scale, systems are crucial, and it's something that you absolutely need to have in place. So the first thing would be activity. The second would be processes or systems. The third, you could say it's goals or vision, but I would even call it clarity. I would call it clarity of really what the whole purpose is, where you want to go, what you want to create here. So if you're a sales professional, what are your goals? What game are you playing? One thing I tell everybody is, if you're playing your boss's game, or if you're just showing up to work every day just to be in the rat race, or just to do that, just to earn money, and you don't have a purpose attached to it, you don't know what game you're playing, you're not going to win. Sales is too hard. Same thing with entrepreneurship and business. It's too hard. You're not going to win if you don't know what game you're playing, if you don't have a vision in mind, if you don't have a picture of what you want to create, and also for what, right? One of my first mentors, Jim Rohn, always used to say, actually, my first mentor, Jim Rohn, he always used to say, if you don't have your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. right? And that sums it up. And when I heard that when I was 16 or 17 years old, I realized right then and there that I want to get into business and I want to have my own ventures and I want to play my own game. Even if I was working sales jobs and working within companies and I was an entrepreneur and I was a director of sales or a president of sales and all the roles that I had, I was still playing my own game. Even though I was in those companies and in those other businesses, I wasn't playing anybody else's game. I knew exactly what I'm doing and I knew what my game was. So the third thing I would say is, most people are not playing their own games, and that's the biggest mistake. Most people don't have a clear vision, don't have a clear goal in mind, and don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So I would take a step back, and this pandemic and the whole global situation that's been happening has been a perfect time to take a step back and really look at what game you're playing. And if you don't use this time to pivot, you probably never will.